Today we're graphing quadratic functions by finding the key features. So let's first talk about what those key features are. So when we're looking at the graph, this vertical line right here that goes through the vertex is the axis of symmetry. If we folded this piece of paper on that line, the two halves of the parabola would line up on each other. The next thing that's an important feature is the y-intercept. So that's where the parabola crosses the y-axis. And then where it crosses the x-axis is the x-intercepts. So a parabola could have up to two x-intercepts. And then the lowest point, in this case, it's the lowest point. Sometimes it's the highest point. That is our vertex. So that's where it kind of changes from decreasing to increasing or increasing to decreasing. And then all of the points on this curve of a quadratic function are called a parabola. So that U-shape graph is named a parabola. So some key concepts to remember if we're going to just look for finding those key features is our zero product property. That says if I'm multiplying two numbers together and the product is zero, then one of them is zero or maybe both. So we would use that product to find our x-intercepts, and then we will calculate our axis of symmetry by finding the halfway point of the x-intercepts. And then we will find the vertex, because once we know the axis of symmetry, we know the x-coordinate of the vertex. Then we find the y-intercept by substituting 0 in for x. And then any point that's not on the vertex, we can reflect across the axis of symmetry, and then we can sketch our parabola. So to calculate the x-intercepts, that would be when y is 0. So I'm going to substitute 0 in for y. And then I'm going to factor this expression here. So I'm noticing that the leading coefficient is negative. I'm also noticing all of these numbers are divisible by 2. So I'm going to first factor out a negative 2. And then I've got, focusing on this x squared plus 4x plus 3. To factor that trinomial, the leading coefficient is 1. So it's one that's easy to factor. I just have to figure out what multiplies to 3 and adds to 4. 3 is a prime number, so the only factors are 1 and 3. 1 and 3 does add to 4. So now I know that will factor into x plus 3 and x plus 1. Got to make sure I bring down that negative 2 that I originally factored out. Okay, so what we're saying now is that when we multiply these three things together, it equals 0. So one of them must equal 0. Negative 2 doesn't equal 0, so either the x plus 3 equals 0 or the x plus 1 equals 0. So if x plus 3 equals 0, to solve for x, I would subtract 3 from both sides, and I get x equals negative 3. And so that would be the order pair negative 3, 0. And then set x plus 1 equal to 0. Subtract 1 from both sides, so we get x equals negative 1. So then I would plot those, both my x-intercepts, so negative 3, 0 and negative 1, 0. Now I'm going to find my axis of symmetry, which will be halfway between these x-intercepts. So to find the halfway point, we add them together, negative 3 plus negative 1, and divide by 2. That gives us negative 4 divided by 2, which is negative 2. So there's a vertical line right here at x equals negative 2. Then I also know that the vertex is somewhere along this line, somewhere when x is negative 2. So I'm going to find f of negative 2. So I'm going to go up to this equation. Everywhere there's an x, I'm going to put negative 2. Then we'll evaluate it using order of operations. So exponents are the first thing we have to evaluate. Negative 2 squared gives us positive 4. The next thing we would evaluate is the multiplication. Negative 2 times 4 gives us negative 8. And then this negative 2 times negative, or negative 8 times negative 2 gives us positive 16. Then adding the three numbers together, negative 8 plus 16 is 8. Subtract 6 is 2. So then our vertex is negative 2, 2. We had put in negative 2 for x, and we got out 2 for y. So we'll plot that point, negative 2, 2. Next, we'll find the y-intercept. So this is probably the easiest one. We're putting 0 in for x. 0 squared is 0. 0 times -2 is 0. 0 times 8 is 0. So we get 0 plus 0 minus 6, which is -6. So we plot 0, -6. And then notice that's 1, 2 units from our axis of symmetry. So I'll go 1, 2 units in the other direction and plot a point there. And then connecting our points with a curve, make sure we include arrows on both ends. That is our parabola. So we don't have to make an entire table. We can just find the most important points, our x-intercepts, our axis of symmetry, the vertex, and the y-intercept.